Good morning. You're listening to the BLAINESWORLD Show. Ordinarily, we're heard here on WPVM FM on Wednesdays at 9 a.m., but today we're at a special Facebook Live edition, and we're speaking with two folks from Hendersonville, and now Victoria, you changed the name, right? Hendersonville Theater?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, which I love. We're talking with two folks at the Hendersonville Theater in Hendersonville, New Jersey, and we're talking about a special upcoming show. And it's my pleasure to have Victoria Lamberth and also Allison Stallings. And welcome aboard, folks. You can wave to all your fans in Facebook world. So if you're watching, you're seeing Allison and Victoria. And before we begin, Allison, let me just ask you a question, because it's the first time you and I have actually done a show together. You grew up where as a kid?
I born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina. That's where I live now. So I do commute up to Hendersonville for shows. But yep, I'm a Greenville girl.
Okay, and when you were a Greenville girl growing up, did you always know you wanted to be in theater?
I did, like, from very young. I was probably 4 years old. I was in my parents' living room putting on shows and stuff. And at a really young age, I remember seeing in a newspaper an ad for auditions at the South Carolina Children's Theater. And I was like, Mom, I have to go. And it just took off from there. And that's been pretty much my whole life, is doing theater. So.
And when you saw that audition, what were you, 19 or 20, was it? No, I'm kidding.
Oh my goodness.
How old were
Very,
you?
very young. I think I was 8 years old when I got to go do that.
Now, here's the question. Do you remember your first show?
I do remember my first show. My first show was Charlotte's Web, and that was at South Carolina Children's Theater. And I had the time of my life, and I think those are some of my most special theater memories, are being in that show.
Now, Victoria's heard me say this, but I have this idea for a fundraiser, and it's seriously, we haven't done it, Victoria, yet, but I want Hendersonville to be the first. But the idea, Allison, is I want everybody to recreate their first role. In other words, when you did Charlotte's Web, did you folks take a video of it, or is there video somewhere?
I doubt there's a video of it anywhere. I think maybe if I dug through some old photo albums, I might could find some pictures, but I had a very small role. I didn't have any lines or anything. I just stood up on stage and smiled real big.
But wouldn't that be a cool idea to, just as a fundraiser, everybody would recreate their first role, So
Yes.
even though we don't have a record of it, and Allison and Victoria, I've made the offer to you in the past, but I'll repeat it. If we ever want to do it at Hendersonville, I'd love to help you with it.
Okay.
I'll promote it, I'll help sponsor it, whatever. But I just think that would be so much fun that everybody, including Allison, would get up and do their very first role. So I'll ask you, Victoria, do you remember your first role?
I guess a first official role would have been in a play called The Roaring Twenties when I was in seventh grade.
Okay.
And I was a girl named Della Dunning.
Okay,
was,
so remember it. Did you actually get to speak though, or sing?
Yeah, it was kind of the very first time I'd ever, well, maybe not my first audition, but one of the first things I ever got cast in. And I had, like, I guess what would be considered one of the lead roles. And it had tons and tons of lines, and I had to learn how to memorize lines for the first time.
And do you remember the part?
Yes. Well, I remember very small details of it. I started the show with this big long monologue on the phone, so I remember that. I remember being incredibly nervous and just speeding through it and being told when I came off stage that I had to slow down. I had one part in it. I was like the pesky little sister, so I did things like crawl across the stage and sneak up on my older sister and her boyfriend and all these kind of things. It was just a fun little part with a lot of physical comedy for my very first thing.
So now we're going to ask Allison. You and I will ask Victoria. So you want to? No, you don't have to share some of it now. We put you on the spot there to recreate that role. But just keep in mind, I just think that'd be so much fun that you and everybody else did their first role. Because especially that one, Victoria. I assume there was no video of that, or do you have a video somewhere?
Yeah, this would have been back in the early '80s, so I doubt there was any video at all.
Before video, okay.
Yeah.
Well, keep that in mind as something we'd like to do. And so, Victoria, I know a little bit about your career, but if we can just give the Reader's Digest version of that. So, since that role, you then did a whole bunch of other acting. Is that correct?
I did a whole bunch of other acting. Started doing like college level theater and professional work when I was like in high school. And then kind of stepped away for about a decade and had a whole different life doing marketing and graphic design, and then came back into it in my 30s and have been pretty much going ever since.
So what got you into directing?
Uh, it kind of happened by chance. I was volunteered to help on a program at my oldest daughter when she was in kindergarten. Her school had a theater program for kids. So I started helping with that. And that sort of led into doing more children's stuff, and then eventually into directing. I was directing and running a performing arts school for kids in Franklin, Tennessee. And I had a friend who asked me to come in and direct a show with him because it had 2 lead kids in the children were the lead characters. And so that kind of got me started in it.
So the question I ask, to put you on the spot, directing or acting, do you have a preference?
I actually like directing. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. This is my 3rd show pretty much back to back. So I'm kind of missing being on stage. You hit it on the head. The thing I don't like is memorizing a lot of lines because I'm getting older and it gets harder and harder every time. But I'm really kind of itching to get back on stage again because I haven't been on stage since 2020 with you, Blaine, maybe when we did the show at Magnetic.
Yeah, that was something. Well, Allison, I don't know if you also saw the show that Victoria directed at Hendersonville, but just blew me away, Victoria. And if you talk about the show, but it was a show that it was just typically a stage reading show, where show I'm talking about, Victoria. And what was the name of it again?
What I wore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, were you involved in that, Allison, at all?
I was not. I love that play, but I did not have the opportunity to see it.
Okay, but it's such a shame because the play is okay. Maybe it's more for women, tend to prefer it than guys. And I'd seen it maybe once or twice before, and it was just okay. But when Victoria directed it, Victoria, and I've told you this repeatedly, but I so much mean it, it really came alive. I've never seen a stage reading of a show come alive like that. And that's just really cool that you were able to do that,
Yes, that was a lot of fun. That show was in the round, so it was a lot more like choreography than it was even blocking a show. So I had a good time doing it, and the whole time I was scared to death that it wasn't going to work.
Oh boy, it hit it. I mean, you not only had a great cast, but it really, to me, it made the show come alive. Mm-hmm. And Allison, we'll ask you to fast forward. So we heard about when you were a kid, your first role. Talk about some of your other roles since then.
Yeah, so this is actually my very first lead role in a show. So I haven't had a lot of speaking roles over the years. When I was growing up, I did a lot of theater in high school, and it was mostly just like ensemble stuff, but I got to do some really cool shows. Like I got to be in Evita, which was really, really fun, and loved being in West Side Story and a lot of musical theater. And then once I got to college, I actually switched over to doing costume design, and that was my primary theater function for a while. So I didn't get to do a whole lot of acting, except for just a couple of parts. I did was Ursula in Much Ado About Nothing, and so some little parts here and there, but it primarily was costume design after that point.
And I know in the costume design, you've done some stuff, I think, for Hendersonville as well. Have you done any costume design?
I think just Stage Kiss is all I've done at Hendersonville. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the same question I'll ask you, costume design then or acting, do you have a preference?
I don't know. I like them both for different reasons. I love costume design. I got a little burnt out when I was in school because it was constant, and we didn't really have a lot of costume designers in the department. So I think I got kind of burnt out. And after school, it was like, oh, I just want to be on stage again. But I like them both for different reasons. But if I had to choose, I would maybe choose being on stage. But I love them both. So.
And what you're talking about, and I'll ask Victoria to comment on this as well, is the fact that a lot of people don't realize that there's so much to a show rather than just seeing 4 or 5 actors on stage. It's just amazing how good costumes can impact the show. And it's funny, Allison, I don't notice often, but when I see costumes, that catch my attention, I say that's really something, that you really notice the costumes. And Victoria, I'll ask you to comment on that, not only in terms of other stuff you've done, but even the current show you're working on. Talk a little bit about how many people behind the scenes make up the show.
Oh, wow. So a normal show for us will have, besides the actors on stage, usually a stage manager who's backstage the entire show, sometimes an assistant stage manager. For this show, we have multiple designers. So we have a costume designer, props. We do have someone who does the lighting design, the sound design. We have a set designer. And then on top of that, you have all the people that sort of work under the designers, whether it's building a set, building costumes, or running sound or running lights for the individual shows. So there's like, most shows will have, and that doesn't even count all the people that come in to help when the show is actually running, whether it be ushers or concession or box office. So usually every show, we probably have up to 100 people that are working behind the scenes on it in some capacity. So it takes a whole community just to put a show together.
And since we're talking about it, mention the current show. So you're right now at work, and it's going to open next weekend on what show, Victoria?
We are doing Sister Amnesia's Country Western Nonsense Jamboree. It's a mouthful. It is the third in the Nonsense series. So if you've seen any of the other Nonsense shows, you'll be very familiar with the characters. Allison is playing Sister Amnesia, who's obviously the primary focus of the show. She is on a country western album tour. If you're familiar with that character in the very first Nonsense, she realizes she was a country western star. And so it's a really wacky, zany show, a lot of references to Hee Haw and Grand Ole Opry and things that if you are at all familiar with country music in the 80s and 90s, you will get all the jokes and all the sight gags. It's a very, very fun and wacky show.
And Allison, had you ever seen the show before?
I had not. I think I knew what Nonsense was, but it wasn't a show I was familiar with very, very closely at all.
Okay. So I guess it's probably tough playing this really heavy, serious, dramatic role. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. Very, very serious.
So that's really cool. So talk a little bit then, Allison, I'll ask you to kind of give a Reader's Digest version of the story. So people not familiar with the Nonsense musicals, and some people aren't. What's it all about?
Yeah, so for this one, these nuns who are all friends, they all are in the same convent. They have, Sister Amnesia has finally realized, oh, I remember who I am. I remember my past, and it's been my lifelong dream to be a country music star. And so they decide to put her on the road and give her a tour. And so she records an album and gets to go on tour and sing her songs, and everything just kind of goes off the rails. And there's a lot of big comedy bits and great songs, and it's just a really good time.
So had that been kind of your dream to always be a country western singer?
So I actually know very little about country music, and there have been many moments in the show, learning through this process where I've had to be like, Victoria, what are they talking about? What does that mean? And she's had to kind of lead me and explain some things to me, and I've had to do some of my own research. But so no, I'm not a big country music fan. This was not always my dream, but I am having a really good time.
It's funny you said that, Allison, because I just watched, I think it was last week, the Country Western Music Awards or something. Mm-hmm. And like you, I only watch that sometimes, Victoria, because I don't follow the music, so it's good to at least see a little bit about what I'm missing, I guess. And so in this show, Victoria, talk about the music then. So I'll get to see some music.
There is probably 40 songs in the show because it is a concert promotion tour for an album. The music ranges everything from traditional country to more of a Broadway style. So there's a little bit of something in there for everybody, some jazzier stuff. If you've ever seen one of these shows before, and if you're familiar with them, there's a whole variety of music that kinds and styles of music and dance that are in these shows. So it's been, it is a show where you never get bored because you're always trying to do something, completely different from one song to the next, from one scene to the next. So it has a lot of misdirection, which is also a lot of fun to try to direct, where people are, actively kind of misleading you or making mistakes or doing things that we're, trying to capture what that would be like to be on stage and have everything go off the rails.
And talk about the show in terms of, aside from the music we're going to see, give a shout out to some of the other performers we'll be seeing aside from Allison.
Okay, so Allison is Mary Amnesia. We call her Amnesia because she had a crucifix fall on her head and she lost her memory at one point. Karen Covington Yao is playing Sister Robert Ann. I believe it's her 5th time to play Robert Ann. She's an old pro at this role and has been, in multiple theaters playing it. We have Lisa Ferrando, who is playing Sister Wilhelm, which is a new character to the Nuns and series in the show. Hogan McLam is playing Father Virgil. And then Sarah Hemby is playing Sister Mary Leo, who's the youngest nun and is still a novice nun.
Well, it's kind of nice, too, for me, aside from the fact that I don't believe I've seen this particular one. I've seen some of the others a bunch of times. But also, you were telling me off the air that there's actually going to be some music behind it, too. There are going to be some musicians behind it as well?
Yes, we have a band on stage for the entire show, playing live, and also they do play a character in the show itself. So we have had a lot of fun putting together what has amounted to a country western band with a fiddle player, a bass player, drummer, and a keyboard player.
Very exciting. Talk about who's in the band, or who's the musical director.
Musical director for the show is Laura Williams, who's associated with, she's done quite a bit of stuff at Asheville Performing Arts Academy. However, she's not playing the show. Alex Tapp is playing the conductor in the show and playing piano in the show. We have Sarah, we have a very, very nice fiddle player from Jim Beaver School named Sarah, who has come in to play the fiddle. I'm Robert, I don't remember his last name as well. And then we just had the musicians this past week, is playing on bass. And then my husband, Tate, is playing the drums.
Oh, is he really too cool?
Yes.
But what's so exciting about it, and to your credit, to Hendersonville's credit, and you and I have just discussed this, Allison, with Karen, with Victoria, and I don't know about how you feel about this, Allison, but to me, live music is so much better than the canned music, like Allison, I guess through your career, high school or elsewhere, you played several times with tracks behind you. Is that correct?
I have done with tracks. I've also done with, like live small orchestra, things like that. But it is always better when you have live music. I mean, when we brought the band in, it just totally changed rehearsal and felt, I don't know, it just felt like so much more authentic, and it's really fun to be able to like even interact with them during the scenes and ad lib and have a little bit of banter and stuff. So it's been really great having them. And
even as a performer, do you feel it's better to perform with a live orchestra or the track?
Oh, absolutely, live orchestra. It just, you feel all the power, especially like we have our band is behind us, and it just feels like there's all this power from behind you, and you have all this support, and gives you this extra boost of energy to just want to be your best because they're trying to be their best, and you just feel like a big team.
And Victoria, the same question in terms of directing. If you had a preference using the tracks or the live orchestra, what do you prefer?
I really, again, like the live band, the live orchestra. It just adds a lot to the show. And of course, it gives you a lot more flexibility as a director. If there is, let's say, a transition or something that's not working with a track, you're basically stuck with what's already recorded on the track. It's very great to be able to kind of collaborate with these musicians and kind of create what we need particular to our show that's not pretty much been pre-recorded and canned. So it just adds a whole other level to the show, and it makes it just a lot more of a creative process.
In your performing, have you done both? Have you done with both?
I have done both. Actually, I've done very little performing to tracks. I haven't done a lot of musical theater in the past 20 years. Very few times have I done musical theater. And so really, I think 2016 was the first time I'd ever worked with a track. When I was doing a lot of musicals back in the 80s and 90s, we always had live musicians.
Okay, very exciting. And to Hendersonville's credit, that you're doing this, because the trend, unfortunately, for a lot of local theaters is to away from that. So thank you for offering this. Talk a little bit then, if folks want to get to see Allison in this and the rest of the cast and musicians and see you direct it, Victoria, talk about the run. When's it going to run from?
All right, so it opens this coming Friday, April 22nd, and it runs through May 8th. We do Friday and Saturday evenings at 7:30 and Sundays at 3 p.m. You can get tickets by going to hendersonvilletheater.org, or you can call 828-692-1082, and you'll get the box office, and we'd be very happy to help you over the phone. Okay,
naturally I'm going to ask you to repeat that. It's a little slower. So if people want to get tickets to the show, best bet is go to the website.
Go to the website would be, if you're comfortable with that, the best way to do this, and it's easy, is to go to the website. It's Hendersonville Theater, THEATRE.org. You can also just Google Hendersonville Theater and it will pop up, and you go there and there is a link to the box office and you can purchase tickets online using your credit card.
And the question I'll ask both of you, but Allison first. So that's the ongoing debate, theater, spelled R-E or E-R, or what's the answer to that,
I
Allison?
spell R-E. I think it's way classier.
Well, especially, and I get confused because when I write it, if the name of the theater now is Hendersonville Theater or whatever, then it's fine. But a lot of times when you talk about theater, you know,
Yes.
I still hear people say you talk about theater with an E-R, Victoria. Is that correct?
I usually refer to like live theater, such
Right.
as performing arts, acting, where you have live people on stage, is RE. But if it's a movie theater, I do
Right.
ER.
I think that's also like what we were taught in school was like RE has to do with like theater itself, and then ER is the building maybe
Right,
or
right.
something.
But what confuses Allison when some theaters spell it E-R, you know, so it's not that way all the time. And just winding down here a little, Victoria, talk a little bit about the fact that Hendersonville Theater itself, RE, has made some really, I think, tremendous changes in last year or so. Talk about, first of all, you renamed the theater too, didn't you?
We did. We renamed the theater in November. We went from Hendersonville Community Theater to just Hendersonville Theater, in the hopes of becoming known as more of an all-encompassing performing arts venue. Because we are the only theater in Hendersonville right now. We're one of the few theaters in this area that actually have a true main stage proscenium theater. So this was kind of also making the community kind of aware of the services we offer to the community, whether it's bringing in if you have a show you want to bring in or a dance troupe or something, we wanted to make people aware that this was also a location where it could be done.
And it's also one of the great locations in the fact that you actually have two theaters. You have the main theater, and then you have a secondary theater, which gives people a lot of opportunities. And talk also about what's else is in store at Hendersonville Theater the next couple of months.
Okay, so our next show after this is Red, White, and Tuna. It's part of the Greater Tuna series. It opens June 17th, I believe, and runs through July
Sometime.
3rd.
Okay.
July 3rd. And then our next show after that is the 25th annual Putman County Spelling Bee, and it opens in late July and runs through August.
And what's so terrific about the season is, I don't know if you recognize this, Allison, if you're familiar with the shows, but I'm impressed that you're taking on some very serious, dramatic, heavy roles, shows this coming season. I'm being somewhat facetious, but it's so much fun because people haven't been to theater for so long that if they come to Hendersonville, they're going to have a good time.
Yeah, yes, we definitely chose a season that was, I might call it a little bit of an escape from reality season. A lot of comedies, a lot of musicals. We do have one straight play, which is The Haunting of Hill House in October for Halloween. But very much a season where people can come and just enjoy themselves and escape the outside world.
And to your credit that you're doing this other show, you said come October, but Hendersonville also has done some very serious and very fine dramatic roles.
Yes.
And since you even mentioned Tate, he was in one performance that just blew me away. The what was it? The show about the teacher?
Are you talking about Oleana?
Right.
The show with the two people in it? Yeah.
Right. And
That's a very heavy show. Yes.
Right. So this season will be a little bit different. And I really look forward to Allison. It's going to be exciting. So I'll see you on stage for the first time next week. And hopefully I'll see Victoria and everybody else. And one last time, the show runs, name of the show, and runs from when to when?
Sister Amnesia's Country Western Jamboree runs April 22nd through May 8th at Hendersonville Theater.
Okay. I'd like to thank you, Victoria Lamberth and Allison Stallings, for being my guests on the special edition of Blaine's World Show that can be viewed on Facebook Live. And we look forward to seeing you actually in person in the near future. Thanks, guys. That was great.
Thank you.